Hi, welcome to today's Yoga for Runners. A strap would be really good today. We're going to start off with some of the leg opening strap work, which I know a lot of you really enjoy and find useful, so we're going to start off with that. And then a couple of cushions as well. If you are somebody who happens to have a lot of props and you like using a lot of props, then option to grab a couple of extra bits. I'll let you know what they are just for use at the very end. But if you're happy with your strap and your two cushions, then that will be fine as well. If you do want your extra props and you happen to have them, if you've got a yoga bolster or your kind of replacement, so a couple of pillows stuffed inside a pillowcase, couple of blocks. I have kind of a smaller one and a bigger one, and a blanket. But like I said, you can easily do without those, but the strap and the two cushions are the important ones for today. So we're going to come started lying down on your back so that we can do the strap work with the legs. So finding your way down when you're ready, and having a strap kind of like nearby to the side or something like that so that you can grab it easily for when we get going. So if you've just come back from a run, maybe this is a nice opportunity to chill for a little bit, lying down on the back. So we won't stay here for long, as always. Don't want your muscles to get too cold, but allowing your eyes to close when you get there, and maybe you want to bring the arms out to the side, palms facing up. And you can bring the knees together if you want. Just taking a few breaths here to kind of bring everything inward a little bit. So starting to notice your body, how it's feeling today. Maybe there are places that are feeling tight or tired. Sort of drawing your attention to those places and noticing the sensations that are going on there, what it feels like. And maybe beginning to notice what your breathing's like as well. So if you've just come in from a run, maybe it's still quite quick. Maybe if you've had a bit of time to kind of get yourself together and relax, maybe your breathing's kind of slowing down a little bit. So again, observing what's going on. There's no need for it to be a particular way. But perhaps noticing where in the body the breath is. So is it up in the top of the chest? Or is it able to access a little bit further down, lower side ribs, back of body, belly? And without feeling the need to change it, just observing what's going on and maybe how it feels to breathe in and out. How fast your breath is, how deep your breath is. Couple more breaths here, just kind of noticing, checking in with your body. On your next inhale, slowly opening the eyes, grabbing hold of your strap. And if you've done one of these Yoga for Runners classes before, you might be quite familiar with how we're going to start today. So drawing the right knee in, linking the strap around the ball of the right foot, and then you're straightening out the leg towards the back of the mat. And if your strap's long enough, then holding onto the strap close to the body, and that's just to help open up the shoulders and the chest, which can kind of end up all a bit crunched up and forward when we're running. And you might want to straighten that left leg out to the ground. And then you can begin to raise the right leg up. So noticing what your leg feels like today. If you've done this before, if you do this quite often, bear in mind that the leg might come to a different place today. So if you've had a run that's particularly tough, or if you've done lots of sitting at a desk this week for work, all of these things can kind of impact the length of the hamstrings and the calves. So hamstrings in particular can be really frustrating little muscles when it comes to the mix of running and yoga, they can get really, really tight. So not taking the leg any further than it wants to be, not kind of forcing it into, you know, a massive stretch, taking it to just where you begin to feel a stretch. And then holding that for a couple more breaths. So if you're doing these kind of stretches at home in your own time, so if you go running a lot, and if you're not doing this class sort of after every run, then you can at least do something like grabbing your strap and doing this kind of opening stretch. Even if this is all you do, it's a good start. And you can hold these for a lot longer if you want. So if you want to be getting into the connective tissue, sort of into the fascia, then holding these stretches, you know, any of the ones that we do today, but particularly these ones for sort of, you know, a good few minutes, 3-4 minutes, you'll start to find that the fascia and the connective tissue will open up as well as the muscles themselves. So that's a nice way if you're working on flexibility with the hamstrings to kind of help that to come along a little bit. As you exhale, we're going to take that foot out to the right. So lowering it down gently, and again, it might be that the foot doesn't come very far, that's no problem. It might be it comes a little further. Seeing if you can keep that left hip on the ground and the left shoulder on the ground, so that all you're doing here is opening up the leg, opening up the hip. And you can take restorative versions of these. So if you were to say hold this for like 3 to 4 minutes, you might not want to be holding onto the weight of your leg with the strap. They can get a little heavy. So you might set yourself up, if you've got enough space, kind of little piles of pillows or cushions, or you might be able to lower your foot onto a sofa, or, you know, whatever the right height is for you. And then you haven't got to worry about holding on with the arms, and that's kind of nice. So yeah, feel free to play around with that if you're doing this at home. On your next inhale, drawing the leg back to centre, and then exhaling, we'll come over to the other side. So the leg's going to cross the body and come over towards the left. Now you might feel that the right hip lifts a little bit here, that's fine, but see if you can keep the right shoulder down so that you're working into the outside of that right hip. And I think we've sort of said before that the outsides of hips in running, you know, these can get really, really tight and they're very, very difficult to stretch and open. So this is a great tool for getting into those places. And if you're feeling super loose today and everything feels wonderful, then that's great, and this will just kind of help to maintain that range of movement. So that's the other thing that this can be used for, is for maintenance, even if your flexibility is very good already. So taking one more breath here, really seeing if you can allow this right hip to let go a little bit, find a little bit of space. And then using your straps very gently to bring that foot back up to centre. We'll take one more breath with the foot in the centre. And then bending the knee, releasing the strap, popping the strap off to one side, interlacing the fingers sort of around the shin or the knee, and just taking some little circles. These don't have to be very big, maybe a couple of times one way and a couple of times the other way. So just getting the synovial fluid in the joint moving, and getting everything a little bit more open. And then we'll come to swap sides. So allowing that leg to come out to the ground, bending the left leg in, and then same as before. So grabbing hold of your strap, bending the leg, lifting the foot, popping it around the ball of the foot, and then straightening out the leg to the end of the mat first. So not doing too much lifting. And then when you're ready, once you've got everything kind of open, the chest is broad and open, then you can begin to lift the leg. And I'd say just lift it really, really slowly. And then you can feel into, when do I start to feel that stretch? Once you think you found that place where you begin to feel it, see if you can bring elbows, shoulders down to the ground. So obviously if you've got a really short strap, then you will probably be holding on more up here, and there's not much you can do about that. But if you've got the length, then certainly allow the chest and the shoulders to open up a little bit. So it is a bit of a battle working with running and yoga simultaneously, particularly when it comes to hamstrings. And all I can say is that if you're really good about doing your stretching after your runs, and if you make yoga something that's a regular practice, so even if you have time to just do it for like 10 minutes of the day, do just like a really, really short flow, or, you know, every other day or whatever, but, you know, the more you can do it, the more you'll be kind of like gently encouraging the muscles to open up, and it will certainly really help. But it is tough because obviously every time you go for a run, you know, your leg muscles will tighten up a little bit. So that's where this kind of consistent practice is really helpful. So taking the leg to the outside as you exhale, lowering down to the left. And again, it doesn't matter how far the leg comes, whether it opens up just a little way, whether it opens up quite a long way. And this leg might feel totally different. So if you want to, you can close your eyes here. You can really kind of feel into the sensations that are going on. We'll take a couple more breaths here. As always, when we use the straps, it is tricky. You do end up needing quite a lot of space. So, you know, if you're in the position that where I've got with the wall here, you'll probably find that you just have to shuffle a little bit over to the right to give yourself a little bit more space. I won't do that, otherwise I'm going to probably disappear out of view. But, you know, if you've got the space, then do wiggle around and shuffle from side to side so that you can open the leg to wherever it is that you want it. On your next inhale, using the straps, gently drawing that leg back to centre. And then we'll exhale, coming over to the other side. So that left hip can absolutely lift up a little bit, seeing if you can keep both of the shoulders on the ground though. And then feeling into what's going on the outside of this hip. Does it feel the same as the other one? Or is it a bit different? So if you know that you're doing a lot of running and you've been using a strap replacement, like a dressing gown belt or something like that, then if there was a prop that I was to say would be really helpful, probably getting a strap would be great. They're just so good for helping to open up the legs and the shoulders as well. And they're not expensive. On your next inhale, using the straps to bring the foot back to center, taking one more breath here. So maybe it already feels a little different, this leg, as you bring it back up for that second round of that stretch straight up. And then bending the knee, releasing the foot from the strap comes to one side, and then you can take a little interlace of the fingers around the shin and do those circles. So feel free to adapt here if it doesn't feel good around the shin. You can go around the thigh if you want to take a bigger circle. So just do a couple one way and a couple the other way. And then when you're ready, we're going to come up to seated. So you can either roll over to one side, coming up to seated, or if you want to, you can roll up to seated. If you're going to roll up, you're lifting both feet from the ground. You can bring the hands down by the side of the body. And then the feet come up overhead and a little roll up to seat. Once you get there, feet to the side, coming onto all fours. And we'll just take a few cat-cows. So just to open up the spine and finish off releasing anything that might be held in the spine or the hips. So hands are directly underneath your shoulders, knees directly underneath the hips, checking that the wrist creases of your hand are parallel with the front of the mat. And then bringing your gaze down in between your thumbs, pressing through the hands to kind of engage through the shoulders, and then allowing the hips to rise, the belly kind of comes down and the chest draws open through the arms. As you exhale, we're rolling the other way. So tucking the chin, rounding the spine, tucking the tailbone. Calming through once more. So as you inhale, that's where you get that feeling of opening up the front of the body and kind of expanding. And then as you exhale, then you're stretching and opening up the back of the body as you tuck and round. And back to center. Tucking the toes underneath, pressing through the hands and the toes to lift the hips to downward facing dog. So you might want to start off by taking a bend through the knees here. That's often kind of how we start, just so you can really ground down through the fingers. So if you can, grounding down through kind of the pads, the knuckles of the fingers, and really evenly pressing into both hands. Then checking that your head is relaxed and soft, so either looking between the legs to the back of the mat or between the feet. Spine is long, tailbone is lifted. And then maybe it might feel nice to pedal the feet here. So starting with up on both toes, then lower the right heel down as you exhale. And that will give you a little stretch in the calf on the right side, so you can kind of feel how the calf on that side's doing. Inhaling up onto the toes, and then exhaling, dropping down the left heel and feeling into how the left calf feels. So coming through that a couple of times at your own pace, sort of feeling into the back of the legs, very gently opening up the calves. And then allowing both heels to come down. You can either keep the legs straight or bent, whatever feels good. And then walking the hands really slowly back up the mat and coming to meet in a forward fold. So if the hands comfortably touch the ground, then the hands can touch the ground. Otherwise, you can kind of let them dangle, allowing the upper body to be soft and heavy. Or you can bring a hand inside each elbow. If you prefer to take a kind of ragdoll position, that's okay as well. So again, not forcing through the legs here. If you're forcing to bring the hands down to the ground, then just allow them to relax and actually be where the legs want them to be. If you've taken the ragdoll, releasing the hands, and then bringing the hands either up to the shins or up to the thighs. So either one's okay. What you're looking for here is lengthen the lower back. So the crown of the head drawing as far away from the tailbone as you can in one line, with the gaze coming straight down. And then releasing back into your forward fold. Inhaling back to halfway lift. So again, we're just doing that gentle opening up at the back of the legs. Exhaling to forward fold. And then from here, walking the hands back out to downward facing dog. On your next inhale, coming up onto the toes to create a little bit of space. And then stepping the right foot forward in between the hands and lowering down the back knee. So feel free to have a little shuffle around. You're trying to get the knee over the ankle. We're coming into a low lunge. So while your hands are on the ground, really seeing if you can kind of sink the hips down. Maybe you start to feel an opening in the front of that left hip. And you can either stay here with the hands down if that feels good, if that's what you need. You can bring the hands up to the thigh, or you can bring the arms up and overhead if you want. So no right or wrongs here. This is just about what your body needs today. If the arms are up overhead, you might want to open the hands and the arms into kind of a cactus position. And then that'll give you a bit of broadening through the chest. So if you know your chest and shoulders have been a bit tight, then that'll help as well. And then if they're not already there, bringing the hands back down to the ground either side of the foot, tucking the back toes under, lifting the back knee, and stepping back, downward facing dog. On your next inhale, rising up onto your toes, and this time stepping the left foot forward in between the hands, lowering down that back knee, taking a moment to set yourself up. And you can keep back toes tucked here if that's your preference for low lunge, it's up to you. I'm going to go for untouched for mine. And then taking a moment with the hands on the ground, really kind of sinking into that hip, seeing how it feels. And then you can either keep the hands down, you can bring the hands up to the thigh, you can reach the arms up and overhead, and maybe if you want to open the chest, maybe you come into that cactus position, so you're getting openness through the chest and through that front hip flexor. And then bringing the hands back down to either side of the foot, tucking the back toes, lifting the knee, and back into downward facing dog. From here, lifting the right foot back and up, seeing if you can keep a kind of even grounding with the hands. And this foot doesn't have to come very far, it can literally be just kind of hovering, or it can be higher if there's the space. And then bending the knee and opening the hip so that the gaze maybe comes under that right armpit. So just kind of opening up the hip a little bit here, opening up the side body. Maybe you want to take a circle with that knee to open the hip. And then coming back to center, straightening the leg, and the foot comes back down. Inhaling, lifting up the left foot this time, grounding down through both hands. Taking a bend in the knee, opening up the hip, maybe the gaze comes underneath the left arm. And then if you want to, you can take a couple of circles. Back to center, straightening out the leg and lowering the foot down. And when you're ready, rolling forwards into plank, lowering the knees down. So we're going to come to open up the fronts of the legs. If you've got problems with your knees and they tend to kind of complain a lot, have lots of issues, then I'm going to give you an alternative. Otherwise, what we're going to do is come to grab either one or both of your cushions and pop it in between the feet, underneath the hips. So you might be quite happy without anything under the hips here, but you know, have a little test, have a little play around. So maybe you see how you feel sitting down straight on the mat. Maybe you try one cushion, maybe both cushions. The more cushions you have, the less pressure there will be on the knees. So if you know you've had knee injuries, please sit on at least one or two cushions just to be safe. So taking a little seat here in hero's pose. And we're going to start off by just taking a seat in this place, so grabbing as many cushions as you want. If your knees, if you've decided that this is not a good position for your knees, then what you can do is you can remove the cushion, bring the heels together, the feet together, and you can just go for a kneel instead. So we're literally just going to be here for a couple of breaths, and you can always pop a cushion in that way instead if you want. Okay. So we're just here, so the knees are sort of at least hips width apart here, so you don't have to have them together. And just kind of beginning to have a little bit of opening up in the front of the legs. And then we'll go into something a bit deeper. Bringing the hands forward wherever you are, rising up onto all fours, moving any cushions out of the way. And then scooting the feet to the side to come to sit down, bringing their legs out in front. So from here we're going to do that same pose, but we're going to go in a little deeper, so we're just going to do it one leg at a time. So again, any problems with the knees, then go back into what we were doing before. So you'd be kneeling like this instead. And what you're going to want to do is bring the hands behind the body, and then you can lift the hips, and then that'll be how you get your stretch in the front. If you're feeling good with your knees and you haven't got any injuries, then staying where you are sitting like this. So leaning over to the left side, putting your left hand down on the ground, so we're kind of moving the body over, lifting up the right hip, and then you're going to bend that right leg so that the foot points backwards. And then you're going to come to sit down on the ground, both hips, that foot's to the outside of the hip. So it's a bit like what we were just doing, except all we've got is just one foot out to the side rather than both. And then from here, you can bring your cushions behind the body. This might already be super intense, so if it's really intense, then feel free to stay here. Otherwise, you can begin to kind of walk back a little bit and maybe come down onto elbows. Or maybe you want to come down all the way. If at any point the knee is twinging, then immediately find your way up, leaning into that left hand again, and then you're straightening out the leg and you're coming in from the other way. So from the kneeling, hands back, lifting the hips. So please be really, really mindful of the knee here. So if you're down on elbows and you're thinking this feels super comfortable, I want to go in a bit deeper, then of course you can move cushions out the way if you want, and then tucking the chin as you come down, being really mindful, you can come down all the way if that feels good. Now as soon as you come down all the way in this pose, it becomes quite a big back bend, so just bear that in mind, that it could end up feeling like quite a big back bend. So please use the cushions to support you and find out what's best for your body. So we'll take a couple more breaths in whatever variation you're taking. So maybe you're taking saddle with that kind of lifting and lowering of the hips from the kneeling position. Or maybe you've come into your half reclined hero pose and you may be sitting all the way up, or you might be part way back or all the way back. So having a little listen into your body, what does it need today? If you have come all the way back, then you really want to keep your chin tucked as you're coming up and not have too much side to side movement. So bringing the hands down to the ground, maybe hold on to your ankle on the right foot. And then you're going to come up onto the forearms so that you're then on your elbows and forearms as if you come down part way. And then from there you can walk the body back up. So wherever you are, really carefully walking your body back up to sitting. And then you're leaning into that left hand, tipping the body over to the left so that that right leg can straighten out, looking after the knee, and then hands behind the body, little shake of the legs. So if you've been doing your saddle pose, you might want to kind of get into this position just for a few moments, give a little shake out the legs, and then you can always come back in. Otherwise, we're going on to the other side. So leaning into the right hand this time, rolling over onto the right hip, and then you're bending the left leg so that the foot comes behind, knees are hips width apart, coming back to sit down, and then seeing how this knee feels. So one knee might be totally fine with coming into reclined hero's pose, the other one might hate it. So if you need to come out, you're bringing the hands to the right side and finding your way out. Otherwise, option as before to begin to come back if you'd like, popping the cushions behind you and then using the hands to walk back. The cushions support your body and you can come back and have a little stretch. So this is something that you can do with both legs in hero pose if you prefer. But sometimes this just feels a little less intense and it can be a little kinder on the knees. It's also just a massive back bend when you do hero's pose with both feet bent. So just be really careful of that if you decide to do that at home yourself. And as always, you're welcome to come down all the way if that feels good. Being really mindful coming down, keeping the gaze ahead and lowering down to the ground, tucking the chin. So if you're kind of feeling like this is really intense and you're sitting very upright, then please don't feel like you need to be down here. You certainly don't. So yeah, just feeling with what's good for your body and what it needs to do. So taking one more breath, whatever your position you're in. And then really carefully finding your way back up. So if you're all the way down, you're keeping the chin tucked, you're coming straight up, not too much rocking, using hands to come up, moving any cushions out of the way, leaning into the right hand, coming up onto the right hip, straightening out the left leg, and then hands behind the body. And no matter what position you took, really nice shake out through the legs, whatever you need to release. So from here, we're just going to do a little bit more work on the back of the legs. You may find, if you notice when you sit like this, that there's kind of a rounding through the spine, so if it kind of feels like you're sitting a bit like that, then what I'd say is pop yourself up on a cushion, and it might be that you just want to give this a go anyway, or on a block, and kind of sit on the edge of it. You'll notice it'll begin to tilt the hips forward, and it makes it easier to sit up straight. Feet can be either together or they can be a little bit apart. And then grabbing hold of your strap again, we're just going to take a couple of breaths folding forward. So you'll link your strap around the balls of the feet. And as always, holding onto the strap close to the body. And then inhale, seeing if you can find some length through the spine. As you exhale, option to come forward if you want. If this already feels like a lot of work in the hamstrings, hold on to the strap and stay seated and just flex the feet and allow yourself to get the stretch that way. Otherwise, you're going to see if you can come forward leading with the breastbone. So sometimes when we take a forward fold and when you're doing running in particular, it's something I see a lot, that people will come to sort of stretch their legs and there's this feeling of needing to bring the head down to the legs, so the forehead or the chin kind of lead the stretch. So don't worry about the forehead or the chin for the moment. Concentrate on the breastbone coming forward, and maybe that means you don't come forward as far, but actually that's okay. And you can hold on to your strap to help you get that kind of forward momentum a little bit more easily with the breastbone. If you've comfortably got a bind with the feet or a hold on the feet, then of course don't worry about the strap, you can hold the feet if you prefer. And then once you've kind of reached that place where your spine's feeling, fairly long, where you feel like you've, not got an insane amount of rounding and folding forwards, then you can allow a little bit of softness if you want through the head, that's fine. So maybe bringing the eyes to close. No pressure here for the nose to have to touch the shin or the forehead to have to touch the shin. Again, this isn't about coming to your maximum amount of stretch. This is about finding that place where you just begin to feel a stretch. So not overworking the hamstrings, going with what they need, with how they're feeling today. And if it feels like your hands are a million miles away from your feet and you're really upright, then that's completely okay. There will be days where that's just how it is, and that's fine. And the more that you're able to practice this, the more that you're able to open up the body, that range will increase, and it will get there. On your next inhale, using your hands to kind of slowly walk back up to standing, to seated, sorry. And if you've got your strap, you'll want to just take that off to one side. So removing any cushions or anything like that you might be sitting on. You can have a little shake of the legs. And then we're going to just finish with a nice little bit of hip work. So coming into a seated position with the feet out in front. And first of all, starting by grabbing hold of the right leg. Going to bend the right knee and see if you can bring the ankle to shin, so the ankle to knee, so your shin bone, parallel with your mat. So whether that's the side of your mat or the front of your mat. So we're coming into, rather than a traditional cross-leg position where we tend to pull the feet in towards the hips, we're going to have them as a straight line in front. You may want to have cushions handy if they're a long way away, by the way. And then with the left leg, we're going to bend that so that we stack foot on top of knee and knee on top of foot. Now it might be that you've got quite a big gap in between the knee and the foot, and that's completely fine. That's what these cushions are for. So if you've got a big gap, just pop your cushions in and get cozy. You can also put cushions underneath the right knee if you want. So that can be quite nice too. So don't be afraid to kind of fill any gaps, even if it's just a really small gap like that. Pop a cushion in so that there's not any straining going on, and so that you can kind of benefit from the pose as much as possible. So this is called fire log pose, and it's very intense if you've got tight hips, that is for sure. So if this is feeling really, really full on right now, don't worry. This is a full on pose. And just don't worry about the knees or the feet needing to touch. Fill the space with your cushions, and then see if you can breathe through any sensations that are going on in the hips. Of course, at any point you can come out, but seeing if you can use your breath to help you stay with it. So the hips work really, really hard when we're running. So this is a particularly important area of the body to open up. If for some amazing reason you're sitting here thinking this is massively comfortable, my knees and my feet are touching and I could sit here for hours, then what you can do is take that forward fold like what we just did in staff pose, leading with the chest, coming forwards, and you can come forward as far as you like, leading with the chest. Personally for me, I'm quite happy staying sitting up with this one today. So let's add in just a few opening arm movements, getting the shoulders moving. So inhale, reaching up tall with the arms. And then exhale, coming into that cactus wide arm position, opening up the chest as you exhale. Hands come down to the ground. So coming into a little wave, inhale up. Exhale, cactus. And down. Inhale up. Exhale, cactus. And down. And then bringing the hands behind the back, you can grab hold of opposite elbows if there's the space, or wrists. If you've got very, very open shoulders and reverse prayer as in your practice, then of course you can come into that if you'd like. So whatever feels good. coming into a position where you can get a little bit of openness through the chest, seeing if you can kind of shine the breastbone forward, drawing the shoulder blades down and away from the ears. And then letting go of the arms, a little shake out with the arms and the hands. And you'll be glad to know we're going to swap legs, come out of this pose for the hips. So removing any cushions, and then taking care to lift that left leg off the top, bringing the right one down onto the ground, hands behind the body, shake out with the legs. That's an intense stretch, isn't it? And then we'll come on to the other side. So feet back to the ground. This time it's the left foot coming on the bottom. So bend in the left leg and lining that one up first of all. So shuffling yourself into position. And once you feel confident that you're there, then you can begin to bring the right foot in and carefully open up the right knee. So it might be that you're about the same, or it might be that on this one, you know, you've got a massive difference. You think, oh my God, how are my hips so different? Hey, it happens for all of us. So filling in your gaps with your cushions. You can pop one or two on the right. You can pop a couple on the left. It's amazing how nice it can feel actually to pop one underneath that lower leg side. So my lower leg's completely on the ground here. And, you know, in my mind, I would probably go, I'm completely fine not having a cushion. But when I pop one underneath, oh, it's definitely much, much better. So, yeah, do have a little play around. Check your legs are still parallel. And then settle in. Maybe you close your eyes, breathing into the right hip this time. So this is another one of these nice ones that you can, well, I say nice, quite intense, but that you can do at home and you can take for a little bit longer if you want, getting into the connective tissue. So if you want to, you can take your vital pose for a couple of minutes or 3 minutes on each side, sitting in front of the telly, whatever feels good. So seeing if you can really allow the hips and the legs to kind of melt away and to not hold on. So checking in and see, am I holding on here? Am I tensing? Am I gripping? Maybe you start to kind of almost visualize the muscle fibers in the right hip, you know, loosening, moving away from each other a little bit, finding a little bit more space. We'll come into a few of those arm circles again, getting the upper body open if you want to. So inhale, reaching up. Exhale to cactus. And back down. So coming through any pace that feels good for you. So not forgetting stuff to do with the shoulders and the chest when we're doing running yoga. They're areas that really, really get tight, and it's important to loosen them off. And then hands behind the back, if that feels good, interlacing. So you can either go as we interlaced before, so you're kind of bringing hands inside elbows or holding onto wrists. If you want something a little bit different, you know, you've got your strap there, of course you can come into a kind of an overhead, you know, cow type, not cow face kind of type stretch like this, but you'll just remember to swap partway through so you get both sides. Or anything else that feels good, you know, tricep stretch overhead. Anything that you can think of that opens the chest. So we're not closing the chest off. So picking your stretch and staying with that. If you are crossing the arms behind the back, maybe you take the opposite cross this time. So we'll take a couple more breaths here. So if you're doing anything that needs to swap arms, then go for it and swap the arms over. Otherwise, staying in this pose, breathing into that space. And then releasing the arms, shaking the arms out. Carefully removing any pillows. You can support the legs. You might want to lean back a little bit as you gently bring that right foot out into the ground. And then the left leg. And then you can release in any way. You can do little windscreen wipers. You can give the legs a shake. Your choice, whatever feels good. Maybe you want to give the ankles a little circle. That pose can be quite intense on the ankles, so giving the ankles and the feet a little circle. And then coming to finish today in Supta Baddha Konasana, or any variation that might feel good for you. So Baddha Konasana is where we bring the soles of the feet together. If you'd rather take this sitting up and you'd like to finish today's class seated, then by all means feel free to do that and use your cushions underneath the knees, and you can kind of stay finishing class like this. If you'd rather be lying down, if you're feeling like you want to have some chilling out time, then you can set yourself up for lying down. So if all you've got is your two cushions, lowering down onto the back, bringing the soles of the feet together, popping the cushions underneath your thighs, your knees to support them, and then you can open up your body. If you've got all your extra props that we talked about, you can make yourself a little bolster bridge. I personally love doing this. It is, I think, one of the most relaxing ways to chill out in this pose. So you're setting up your blocks so that you can lean your bolster or your cushions against them like that. I like to fill the space at the bottom with a little blanket, but you don't need to. Basically, I'm just making it as cozy as I can, and then I'm lying down on that. So this is only if you have these props available. Otherwise, you can just come down onto your back. And then again, we're bringing soles of the feet together, popping the cushions underneath the thighs, the knees, so that they're not having to do any gripping or any work. And then opening up the arms, palms facing the sky. So I guess the plus about maybe this position is that you get a little bit more openness through the chest and the shoulders. So if you've got sore shoulders or neck, this one's particularly good. But, you know, like I said, no worries if you haven't got these props. You can still get that nice open feeling lying down on the floor as well. And allowing your eyes to close once you get there. Checking in that you're not gripping in with the hip flexors, that your knees are kind of really able to relax down and out. They're not having to hold anything. And maybe wondering how your body might feel different now. So a little observation of the body, like you did at the start, of those kind of tight areas, sore areas. Do they feel any different? Is there a bit more space? Any poses or postures that felt particularly good today? Any poses or postures that maybe highlighted areas of tightness that you weren't aware of before the class? Taking these few moments at the end to be curious about what's going on for you, for your body. Allowing this practice to develop a deeper connection with your body, a deeper understanding, which you can take into your running and help you to kind of, work with that better. Reduce tightness, reduce the chance of injury. And also another space where mentally you're able to let go of everything else from the day. It's one of the real joys of running, it's often one of the things that people highlight to me about running, is how it's an escape. It's a way of clearing the mind, of de-stressing. Taking a few moments in whatever position you've chosen. Allowing your body to be still, to rest and to recover. This is such an important element of any training, to have this time as well of allowing the body to be open and to recover. So if you're able to take a few more minutes today in this position, then please feel free to do so, and please take that opportunity. Otherwise, thank you for practicing with me today, and I hope this has felt really good, really nourishing after your run. Namaste.